All right. Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week. Um, Welcome. This is your HMG weekly wrap up. And as you can tell, things are looking a little different today because I got this handsome feller over here next to me. And we're going to bring him on here in just a hot second. But May has been Heroes Month, and this particular weekend is a special one to us, it being Memorial Day weekend and whatnot. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But we want to thank all of our community heroes. May has been Military Appreciation Month. It has been Nurses Week, Teachers Week, International Firefighters Week. Police Week was last week. This week is EMT week. And then, of course, this coming Monday, we have Memorial Day, and we will be live in D.C. Memorial Day for the parade. Let me rephrase that. We're planning on being live for Memorial Day. So, yes, let me bring on our special guest here. You guys can see the name. Those of you that are watching or watch this later on, Mr. Jerry Dugan. Jerry is a fellow Army veteran, a podcaster. He is part of the HMG family, and more importantly, he is a friend. So, Jerry, glad to have you on, and thanks for agreeing to come on this morning with me.
Oh man, Adam, thanks for having me on. And I mean, thankfully we've got coffee as an invention. So get me fired up in the morning.
I love it. I love it. And good morning, Christina, Jeremy. Appreciate you guys jumping on. Thank you very much. Hope you guys are having a good week. Jerry, it's a crazy month. Like I've always said, we here, as you know, HMG, we celebrate community heroes pretty much all the time, but May is what we call Heroes Month. And you heard me brought it up before. It's been Military Appreciation Month, and then all of our community heroes. I was like, man, and I've always said this. I was like, there's 12 months in a year. You think we could probably spread it out just a little bit? But in all seriousness, this coming weekend is a special one, I think, for us particularly. And folks, those of you out there, I'm not talking about this is the weekend where you get a lot of sales or anything like that. Although it's whatever, if that's your thing. But for us, it's Memorial Day weekend. And Jerry, let me ask you this: what is this weekend? What does Memorial Day mean to you?
For me, it's really, thinking about the folks that we served alongside who did not get to come home. That's the biggest thing for me. And then of the people who did come home, there are folks who like emotionally and mentally did not make it back. They're still struggling. They've got their fights with PTSD. They've got their fights with just reality in general. And, how do they fit back into the fabric of American society? And so for me, Memorial Day is about taking that pause. So I relax a little bit. I used to do a 12-mile ruck march to just really get my head cleared and
Yeah.
remember those folks. And so that's more of what it is for me. And it's it's not about the barbecues. It's not about the shopping. It's who didn't come home and how can I make the most out of the life I've got since I did get to come home.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a sombering day. This year we've done it in the past where we've gone to the Memorial Day parade in DC. We are going to be doing it. The plan is to be down there again this year, and it's bittersweet. The plan Monday is to walk the mall in DC. And if you've never been to DC, it's definitely something you have to go to at least once, and then head over to Arlington and go over there for a little while. So again, those of you, Memorial Day is a day to remember and to honor those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. So let's keep that in mind this weekend as you're out there. Nothing wrong. Do your barbecues and stuff like that. Not wrong with that. If that's what you guys are into. But just I asked this weekend to take a moment of silence. Take off, get off the phone, get off the computer, just step outside and realize just, as crazy as the world is, there are people who have sacrificed, because we still got it pretty damn good. So, happy Memorial Day. I should say happy Memorial, but I hope everybody has a good Memorial Day weekend this weekend. Who do we have here? Jeremy? I hear you, brother. I hear. And it looks like we got Shay Sparks. Why does that name sound familiar?
The Shay
Yeah,
Sparks.
the mayor of every podcast event in the country.
Oh,
Loves her to death. Yeah, she's great. Let me. I'm going to talk real quick about last weekend. Last weekend we did. We had a great time. Warriors on the Water. You guys look this up on the old interwebs. Warriors on the Water LTD or Warriors LTD. .com. They had their annual pig roast, and we were out there in the rain with our sister company serving coffee last weekend. Had a great time. A lot of great veteran organizations came out. One, I want to give a special thanks and shout out to Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Company. They make candles, and if you go to Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Co, you can find them on Facebook. And thank you. My wife had a field day at your booth. So got a whole bunch of candles, and the house smells great, but it's really good. Marine veteran, him and his wife, they make these candles, and it was great. So a special shout out to them. Jerry, we got an event coming up here in June at Johns Hopkins University. Those of you that are interested in getting into the real estate field, this is something you definitely want to check out. And in fact, just because I'm a solid guy and I'm feeling very giving today, I am going to post this link in the comments here. It is the Eventbrite thing. It's like a 2-hour class, but they got 4 or 5 real estate experts in the country that come down, and they're actually really gearing this towards veterans that are transitioning out of the military that want to get into real estate. And I think veterans could be very successful in the real estate business because of all the leadership and how we handle things. So go check that out if you would. Let me see here.
Their career center is amazing too. Johns Hopkins. They had me come in and speak once to talk about like, what do you do when your career's stuck in a rut? And I was like, wow, it's kind of cool to see them doing this. Sorry.
Yeah. I was, when I got the information on it, I was like, oh man, I've always wanted to get into like real estate. And then I was like, oh, I got to find the money to do it.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. You really don't need a lot of money to really get into it if you take these certain steps. And I think that's what's really cool. And that's one of the things that they're actually going to cover, how to get into real estate investing or just get into being a realtor in general. So this is a great opportunity, folks. So by all means, please go check it out. And actually, Johns Hopkins University, they have a master's program in real estate. I didn't realize that until I got this information. So go check that out. HMG Coffee, our sister company, use promo code HMG10, 10% off. We're going to extend that into June just because I'm feeling very giving right now. Yeah, we're going to do that into June. You guys heard it here first. Go to hmgcoffee.com or hmgbeverage.com. All right. Let's get into one of my favorite parts of the show. We're going to cover some news topics here, but before we do that, I want to know, and I kind of did this a little bit backwards, Jerry, so I'm going out of order here, so forgive me, but who is Jerry? Let's get to know Jerry here first. Who's this Jerry fella?
Jerry is this guy who very luckily met this woman named Olivia who said, yes, I'll marry you and have a family with you and make babies and all that stuff. So let's see. I was an Army brat and did the one thing my dad said to never do in my life. He's like, do whatever you want with your life. Just don't ever join the Army. And I was like, okay, Dad. And then 8 years after he told me that, I called him up. I barely graduated from college. I was a pre-med student with like a 2.1 GPA. So you guys are probably going to be very grateful I never became a doctor because I mean, the GPA said it all. But I remember calling my dad. And I was like, "Dad, guess what?" He's like, "What?" I joined the army to be a medic, because at the time I thought I wanted to be a doctor,
Yeah.
and that was a way to kind of beef up the skills, and dead silence. Probably the only time I ever disappointed my dad in my entire life
Oh, wow.
was that.
So he was really upset about it.
He was sad, and then he was like, "Well, did you sign up as an officer?" I was like, "Nope, I wasn't enlisted." And he was silent again, and it was just, I mean,
2 for 2, Jerry.
yeah, he was still supportive, he was like, it was kinda cool because now we had something that we had in common because, while I was in basic training, the guy writes me a letter for the first time in his life.
Oh,
He's not a letter writer, and, he's sharing, like, the inside scoop about his experiences in basic training. So he's like, "Hey, by now you're probably used to waking up at the sound of a crashing trash can at 4 in the morning. Uh, Hope you're doing well. Let me know if you need anything. Love you, son. Proud of you." And then he comes to my graduation. I'm like, "Oh, that's my dad." I was like, "Well, Dad, they're not allowed to throw the trash cans anymore. And they just bang on them." And he's like, "Ah, that's no fun." And so anyway, I served in the army for 4.5 years. During that time, I met my wife. She was also in the army. Met her when I got back to my unit. Um, my platoon leader paired up all the people from Kosovo with all the new people.
yeah.
She was the person I was assigned to teach her everything I learned in Kosovo. Um, I taught her everything in 4 days. I liked her so much that this was, like, my way to, like, stay
Hang
in front of
out
her.
with her and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So, back then, this is in, like, the late '90s, going into 2000, and, to keep her in these conversations with me, I started doing correspondence courses. This is before they moved them all online.
Like the
So
yellow book.
yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So I had in my room a stack of like 30 or 40 of those yellow booklets. I didn't care if I did the Scantron or not. I did them just because I'm like, well, they're here. May as well get the promotion points. But it was really to get content. So I was like talking to her about stuff like, how do you set up an OE254 in the field? If you need to set up a medevac site, how do you do it with infrared chem lights so you don't get caught by the enemy? And took 3 months for me to finally ask her out. And when I did, she was like, "What took you so long?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I've been dropping hints for 3 months that I like you." And I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
"Like what?" And she said, "Did you really think I wanted to hear about an OE254 for 2 hours?" I was like, "You were asking questions. You were eating it up, I thought." She goes, "No, I was getting you to keep talking because I like you." I'm like, "Ah." So that was like almost 24 years ago. And we're still together. Um, 2 kids, they're grown up, 21, 22. I live in Dallas, Texas. We raised them up. They, uh, they make us proud. They make us look like we did a good job as parents.
Nice.
So it's a lot just them becoming themselves and doing their own thing. And we're like, "All
Right.
right, cool." So, there's that. My career kinda went all over the place. I was a medic in the Army, then I was a leadership, development consultant most recently,
Yeah.
leading a team of 4 consultants, and in between, I did everything from real estate sales to, ministry work, and even, training and development in the corporate healthcare space.
So
So
you're a man of many hats.
yeah, yeah.
Many hats. Tony Abrascato, good friend of mine down in Florida. He's a Marine. We won't hold that against him. But love you, brother. Appreciate
He likes when we talk dirty to him.
you.
It's a medic trait too, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Gary, what got you into you're a fellow podcast. You got a podcast called Beyond the Rut.
Mhm.
You can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts, folks. And you can also find it on Heroes Media Group. What got you into podcasting?
The funny thing is I've always had this dream to be a public speaker that would inspire people to live their best life.
Yeah.
And January 2014, um, I was doing just what most people do after Christmas, and that's, let's go running with these brand new shoes I got for Christmas and justify them. And while I was doing that, I was thinking, okay, I've got this blog, but if I want to be a speaker, I really got to showcase the speaking side of things. So
Right.
I think what I need is a podcast because and I was listening to podcasts as I was doing this jog, and it kind of hit me like I was listening to a Christian marriage show, and they decided to talk about family and parenting and raising kids. And the thing that stood out to me is that they had brought like their own 7 or 8 year old onto the show, and the questions they were asking the child, it was clear like they were really having to prod and pry the answers that they wanted to hear out of their child, because the child just wanted to play with a microphone
Right.
and, make puss sounds and justify the need for a pop filter. It was a little girl, very adorable. But they're like, okay, so when somebody's mean to you, you like to tell an adult, right? And then she's like, yeah. Yeah, because adults can help you when things are bad. Like, you could tell, like, she just could not care less about the show, what they wanted her to say. They had to kinda give her the answers, and I thought, "Well, that's so fake," and that makes me question everything about their show, and I thought, what I really need, and a lot of my friends kinda need this too, is we need a Christian man who's just dumb enough to let his kids call him out on stuff and show, like, what authentic fatherhood looks like. Somebody who's kinda like, they don't have the answers, but they're trying their best. We need somebody like that who's dumb enough to, like, let their kids just call them out. And it'd be really cool if, like, maybe the son just asks dad a question every week, and dad's gotta answer it unedited. I'm like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. Somebody should do that." And then it was like, I c I'm that guy. I need to go do that. And so I walked home because by then I was tired. And so I asked my son, I was like, "Hey, son," he was like maybe 12, 13 at the time. I was like, "What do you think about a father-son podcast? You ask me any question you want, I've got to give the answer." And he looked up at my wife and he asked, "Do I have to?" I was like, "Oh, there goes my dream." It was like it lasted a whole 10 minutes. But my daughter, she was like 9 or 10. She jumps out. I still have no idea where this little ninja jumped out from, but she comes out of the woodwork and she's like, "Dad, we'll make it a father-daughter show. I'll be your guest
Yeah.
host. Let's go ahead and start recording now." And I'm like, "Well, I don't even have equipment. I don't know how to do this thing." She's like, "You got a phone.
Yeah.
Get in the room. Let's start recording." And I'm like, "But where do I post it?" She's like, "You haven't been watching YouTube videos on how to do a podcast. Let's go. We got this." She's like the ultimate excuse killer. So that started a show called Family Time Q&A Podcast. It lasted 89 episodes, and it wound up being a rotation of my daughter, then my wife, then my son, then back to daughter, wife, son. Every single episode, they would ask me a question that I wasn't prepared for. I had to answer it on the spot, and then I would flip it and ask them a question they weren't prepared for, and then they would give me an answer. And the one thing you'd think I'd learn after 89 episodes is that it doesn't matter what they ask me. That's not the setup. They're gonna throw me under the bus when I ask them my question. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
89
That's
episodes, I got called out on so many things, and it made me a better dad and a better husband as a result. And then from there, my friend Brandon, he wanted to start a show, and that's how Beyond the Rut came about. He wanted a show that would minister to men 35 to 45, married, they got kids, all the boxes checked of what success should look like, but feel stuck.
mm,
And then how do we help them have that mindset shift, look at success from a different perspective, and go after the things that really matter for them? And then that was August 2015 when that show aired. And yeah, now it's just me on the show. Brandon retired from it in 2021 when he realized he'd rather be with his grandkids than hang out with me.
yeah.
And then we had a guy writing for the show. He quit like on episode 16. So yeah, I got to be co-host at that point.
And
And
you've been holding down the fort since.
oh
It's
yeah.
still going strong. Rob, good morning to you from AZ. Appreciate you. Yeah, I love your show, and I like the name of Beyond the Rut. Like, being a hunter, I was like, "Rut." I was like, "Oh, that's hunting." Yeah, at first, I gotta admit it, man. That's still where the first part of it there. But then, when we first started talking, when we met last year, and you were talking to me about the show and stuff like that, I was like, "Man, that's really." As a single, I was a single parent for many years, as most people know, and as a father who's, my son's on his way to the Grand Caymans to go scuba diving
Mm,
right now for the next 8 days. Totally jealous, by the way. Um, you think about it, you get into these ruts. How do you get out of them? What do you do? Especially if you feel alone
yeah.
or you don't have anybody to talk to and whatnot. And I really like a lot of the advice that you give on the show. And it's not just advice. One thing I really appreciate is that you really put yourself out there and you really open up and share your experiences and whatnot. So I respect that about you um, through and through. And the advice that you give is not just advice, but you're giving tools and tips to people, to the guys to be like, hey, this is where you're at. Give this a shot. Give this a try. So it's called Beyond the Rut. Make sure you guys check it out. You can check it out again anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, or you can find it right there on Heroes Media Group. Again, Jerry, I certainly appreciate your friendship and being a part of the HMG family, man. You add a whole lot of value to the HMG family. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. And thank you to Shay, the mayor of all
Yeah.
podcast conferences, because she's the one who introduced us. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, she's like the godmother of
She
podcasts.
knows everybody. And if she's still on right now, I know she's eating this up because I'm going to see her next month. We're going to an event down in North Carolina, and there's never a dull moment when she's around.
Yeah.
Which is great. Jerry, let's get into some topics, some headlines and stuff. And some of these are going to be controversial, and that's okay. Remember, guys, that the stuff that we bring up here, as far as like the headlines that I bring to you each week, merely things that I thought were interesting. And I want you guys to think about stuff that you can look at, and you can, take it, look it up, throw it back, leave it, whatever. But first one out the gate is I'm gonna ruffle some feathers, and I hope I say his name right. Said no one ever. Klaus Schwab to transition to a non-executive WEF role. Now, I practiced the Klaus to really get that phlegm in my mouth to say that. I'm not a fan, folks. Those of you that have watched this show long enough know that I am not a fan of this gentleman or the WEF. But since 2015, the World Economic Forum has been transforming from conveying platform to a leading global institution for public-private corporation. Let that sit in for a second. You take it how you want. But the WEF said in a statement, as part of the transformation, the organization has been undergoing a planned governance evolution from a founder-managed organization to one where a president and managing board assume full executive responsibility. Now, why am I bringing this up? Again, just thought it was interesting. You're not seeing a lot of it in the mainstream media side of it. You kind of got to dig for this stuff. But the World Economic Forum, I feel like this is an organization that kind of is, they're the ones that have a plan for 2040 agenda or 2030 agenda, excuse me. And this particular gentleman has gone in and say, hey, in a few years, you will not own anything and you will be happy. Okay. All right. Jerry, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm scrambling to look up World Economic Forum.
So yeah, the World Economic Forum has been around for quite a while, and yeah, and it's one of those organizations where the elites fly to Switzerland in their private jets when they tell everybody, hey, you should watch your carbon footprints and do this, and this. It's funny. Nonetheless, I bring this particular one up because it's the World Economic Forum. If it's being talked about, it's something that we need to pay attention to because there's going to be some changes, I think, coming here in the next 18 months. So pay attention, folks.
Yeah. The transition to a president and managing board does show that they're establishing some permanence here. They're putting some systems in place that this thing's going to stick around well after this guy is gone from this earth.
Right.
So that's one a flag for, I don't know, red or green. That's up to the person listening or watching. But then, I know governments and private industry have always worked together in some way, shape, or form, whether it's fundraising, mustering up weapons to fight a war, and what have you. But it sounds like, it's worth keeping an eye on these guys because they might be determining what the next big lobby is or the next big push at things like the UN. And I'm trying to say this without sounding like a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, it's still worth watching. Yeah,
everybody knows. Like, I get on here and there's week. I'm sure there's people on here be like, Adam's a conspiracy theorist. You should listen to the show every weekend. And like every week, I might say something that kind of teeters along that. And again, it's not that I'm a conspiracy. First off, everything starts with a theory. Let's be honest, okay? So, and if you look at the last 6-7 years, all the conspiracy theories that people were talking about several years ago are turning out to be true. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. It's all it's all right there. You got to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But nonetheless, check it out, the WEF, and find out what they're doing. Next up, this is an interesting one. Lawmakers move to automate the selective service registration for all men. This was coming. I think I got this out of the Military Defense or military.com, something like that. A new plan from House lawmakers would automatically register men for a potential military draft when they hit the age 18. Now, I remember getting when I turned 18, that was something I had to register for, and that was a lifetime ago. And you did that for to avoid legal consequences connected to failing to file paperwork or on proper time. Language included in the House Armed Service Committee draft of the annual defense authorization bill would mandate the automatic registration of all males ages 18 to 26 living in America in the selective service system. The federal database used the military draft in case of a national emergency. Now, this hasn't been used. The system hasn't been used in over 52 years. But I thought this was kind of interesting, that this is kind of something that they're going back to, because apparently, at least in some of the readings that I did, were that they haven't been pushing this system the last several years, like the last 7 to 10 years. So I think it's interesting. I thought that was something that was always in place. You turn 18, you got to file for this. And I guess my question is, are they going back, or they're starting to push more focus on this because the recruiting numbers the last several years have been down so much? I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. If the enrollment in the military, enlistment in the military, gosh, man, I've been out long enough to forget what the word is.
We're getting old, man.
Is there a critical mark where it's like, oh, we cannot defend our country at this point because our percentages of enlistment have gone down too low? And then, on the flip side, I could see where we've probably been laxed on the selective service registration because we've been in all volunteer military since the 1980s. We don't need this. We don't need the draft unless we really get invaded and things get really, really bad. But we're so robust and really the number one military in the world. We don't need this.
Right.
And so I think over the years, when you start looking at like budget cuts, it's like, how do we get people enrolled? Well, we don't have a system in place where we can just automatically do it. So they got to send us a card. Well, now we got a bureaucracy that needs to input all that information into the database, and then it's got to be enforceable. How do we find the guys who didn't register? Now we got to have another bureaucracy that goes after those guys, and so I think by having it automated, we got the system. We're doing the one thing we said Social Security was not meant to do, which is to become our identification number. And so you just pull from those roles. You get access to that database and say, great, who has a Social Security number, who just turned 18 years old and is a citizen and is male, and then boom. And now you've got the database filled. You don't have a bureaucracy that's bloated that has to manually input this information, and you don't have to go track people down for not doing it. It's just done by computer. I think in modern day, it might be, well, what constitutes male? And so I could see that becoming a hot topic as this thing gets more solidified as well. It's like, and do we just open it up to all citizens 18 to 26, not just male? So those are some other questions that might come up in the coming years.
That is certainly some solid points there. Alan, good point, Alan. Let's comment there on Facebook. Appreciate it, Alan.
There's stuff going on.
Jerry, I like it's not often where I'm at a loss for words. I'm really at a loss for words with that.
Sorry.
You make a good point, though. I mean, you make a good point. Nowadays it's but here's the other thing. I remember, like, back in our day, and it still happens today. There are countries out there where you're required to be in the military for at least 2 years, 3 years, or whatnot. There's some countries that make you males go into the service for X amount of years before you can go out and do things. And there was a time in my life where I thought that was a great idea. I think we should mirror that here in the United States as well. I don't know if I necessarily feel the same way now about it. I haven't thought much about it, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. Maybe something that needs to be considered. And I like your point as to maybe it's not just males. Maybe it needs to be everybody, right? Females too. I mean, it's some people are going to be like, and here's the thing. I'm just opening this up. I'm not saying this is how I feel necessarily, but some females will be like, oh, well, why do we have to do that X, Y, and Z? Well, you're also the one that's usually the same one screaming, well, how come we don't get this, and this? So it's like, let's make it an even playing field, right?
Yeah.
That would be fair. My thoughts on that.
And
I'd be
Israel
curious
has
to hear,
a very strong co-ed military fighting force, and but yeah, if we truly want to go after equality, and not to dumb down like qualifications either, like infantry still got to do infantry things, tankers, they still got to lift up parts that weigh like hundreds of pounds, and artillery, those rounds are heavy.
Yeah.
So there's got to be those qualifications of like, can you actually lift these things? And so we can't reduce those standards, but we could expand the pool.
Oh,
Theoretically.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. There's women out there. I like the Ranger School stuff like that when they went through that. I don't know all the details. I met some of the women that went through it several years ago, and it's like there are women out there that can supersede some of those jobs that men can do.
Yeah.
It's not about whether I don't necessarily think it's about the sex. I think it's like, can the person do the job or not? And that's really what I think it really should boil down to. Just my 2 cents on that. So, all right, next up, they got a couple more folks. Governors sign a letter opposing the World Health Organization pandemic treaty. Now, if you remember a couple weeks ago, I talked about the World Health Organization, about some of the things that they have coming down the pipeline. Well, it's here. There's been over 24 Republican governors that sent the letter to President Joe Biden opposing the World Health Organization pandemic agreement. Okay. And the leaders argue that the treaty would drastically change a role of the governors in response to their charge as the state health officials. They wrote that the objective of this instrument is to empower the World Health Organization, particularly its uncontrollable director/general, with the authority to restrict the rights of U.S. citizens, including freedoms such as freedoms of speech, privacy, travel, choice of medical care, and informed consent, thus violating the Constitution's core principles. Again, this goes back to kind of the control thing. Now, I take the WHO and the WEF kind of ties together, but the World Health Organization, this is them basically getting into your business. I don't remember. And what's funny is these two organizations, they come together. I don't remember ever voting on putting anybody in charge. Jerry, do you?
Not at a global level. I mean, I'm like scanning real quick. What does the agreement even include for the pandemic? Like, what kind of data is
So
shared?
so what's funny is that not funny, ha ha. This happened because of the last pandemic that we had,
Yeah.
the COVID one. And I think the COVID one was just a tip of the spear, because now what they're doing, and I didn't bring up this particular one, I will now, but they're saying that the next one is the bird flu X. I think it's called bird flu X.
Oh, it's always going to be a bird. No,
Yeah.
stupid birds.
Hey, wait a minute.
Alfred Hitchcock was right.
Yeah, right. So it's they're telling you who, okay, this is where the conspiracy comes in. They're telling you what the next one is, and they're hiding everything out in plain sight. And everybody's like, oh, that's horrible. I don't think that's going to happen. Blah 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 blah. But the World Health Organization is basically what they're doing is they're saying, okay, this is a pandemic this is something that we're seeing here in China or India or South America, wherever, right? Just pick a spot wherever. We're coming in and we're like, okay, we're going to implement X, Y, and Z for all of these other countries, and we're going to implement it now, like the mask mandates and the travel mandates and certain requirements and restrictions that people can and can't have. I think this is, if this happens, I don't, you can kiss your free all of your freedoms goodbye. You're not going to be able to, they're talking about, you're not going to be able to decide where you get your medical care, and then
Mm,
only certain doctors will be able to prescribe certain things or do something. Because remember, during the last pandemic, they had a issue. They were silencing all the doctors that came out and were speaking against COVID. Remember,
yeah.
so this is kind of that 2.0. And again, folks, don't take my word for it. Look this stuff up. This is all things that you can find online, and this is the stuff that you got to kind of, put the puzzle pieces together. Oh, there goes the camera again. All right, I knew that was going to happen this week. I was getting nervous that it wasn't going to happen. At least I'm
What a
consistent.
great ad though for Imaging Edge webcam.
Right? Yeah, yeah. And if anybody from there is looking to sponsor our show, by all means, reach out and get a hold of us. So that being said, so WHO, World Health Organization, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, whether you're watching the live or you watch this later on during the rest of the week. So check that out. It's one of those organizations, not a fan. And I have people in the healthcare field, uh, and some of them are not fans of the World Health Organization either. So it's pretty interesting. This is just in. China has surrounded Taiwan.
Oh, shoot.
I don't have all the details on that. That just popped up. China has surrounded Taiwan. So keep an eye on that, folks. We've been saying that for the last several years. It's going to be interesting. I got a feeling this is going to be an interesting weekend.
It's gonna be intense for sure, yeah. I think the Philippines just finished the Balikatan exercises with the US and Australia and a whole bunch of other people who normally don't play along. They're like, "Hey, let's practice,"
Yeah.
I think specifically their mission was to retake islands in the Philippines that had been captured by an aggressive force, and it was kinda clear, like, "Yeah, we're practicing to take our islands back from China."
Right, and
Cool.
it's, the last, almost 8 years now, I think, the South China Sea, was China building those man-made islands
Mhm.
out there, and right before, I think, 2016, everybody was talking about it. In 2015, and then 2016, it just went off the radar. And I could be wrong on the dates on that. I think that's around the time frame. But then you look at it, and it's like, oh, now they're fully functional. There's a military base there. They have operational capabilities in the South China Sea. They're trying to take over that area. We all knew. I say we, as in those that have been paying attention to what's going on in the South China Sea, realize that they're stopping the export from that. That's a major trade route in that region. And if China controls that area, then, and we've had trouble with China in the past a couple of years with ships and them intercepting ships and stuff like that. So I think the tensions in the South China Sea are going to be, they've already risen, and I think you're going to see an increase in hostility over the next several months, unfortunately. So that being said, Jerry, let's move on. Last
Yeah.
one. I'm really uh kind of shocked about this one. Student told to edit his patriotic speech, refuses. Student Jimmy Hayward was told by St. Bonaventure Catholic School principal Mary Flock to edit his campaign speak for Commissioner of School Spirit and Patriotism. Okay, wait a minute here.
It's in the title.
It's so patriotism is in the title. And then the principal says, no, 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 no. You have to edit your speech. So the student's mom launched a petition to have the principal removed from the school. And the mother, quote, my son Jimmy Hayward decided to run for commissioner of the school spirit and patriotism at his school this year. The principal, Mary Flock, told him he needed to make changes to his speech. she wanted everything in his speech regarding patriotism to be removed, even though patriotism was part of the position
Yeah.
and the title that he's running for.
It's a campaign speech.
Right. And Mrs. Flock, the principal of the school, said that if he did not remove all parts of patriotism, he would not be able to read his speech to the rest of the candidates. There's more to it. You can look this up. As this happened, it was a California student told to edit patriotic speech. This particular one, I found this on AmericanFaith.com. Good organization, but I think that's troublesome. I think if you're telling kids to edit, or especially in schools, that you need to edit your patriotism. Yeah, Jerry, I remember. Do you remember as a kid, what was one of the first things you did when class started early in the mornings?
Oh, Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You would stand up and you would say the Pledge of Allegiance, right? And if you didn't stand up, back in our day, it was chances are you were going to get a ruler, or you were going to get detention or possibly suspended, depending on how many times you were, a shitbag. Excuse my language, but this stuff here really pisses me off when you have teachers and principals that come in and try to do that stuff. I think it's wrong. What are your guys' thoughts? Should the kid take out all of his patriotic stuff? Let the kid be patriotic. You know what? I hear stuff like that. I see stuff like this. Gives you a little bit of hope for the future. A little bit of hope for the future.
And this is like a lost teachable moment when we just shut it down and not actually foster an environment where debates can happen. I've seen YouTube videos of like a history teacher who led his class in a debate on the merits of and the nuances of the Civil War, and have his class debate each other on that. And uh, it was really neat to see, like, these folks having a discourse without insulting each other. They're actually able to present facts and perspective and points of view of the sides they were representing. And here, this is a seventh grader who's campaigning
Yeah.
for a position that they actually have in the school, commissioner of school spirit and patriotism.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they could have better defined patriotism as, no, it's more school spirit, or remove patriotism from the role if it's more school spirit than that. There's not enough details in the article to say what this was, but man, what a great opportunity for that kid to post his speech public and let everybody else see it and decide for themselves. Like,
Yeah.
what the heck? And teachable moment for the principal here. Like, if the job is to teach us how to think, not what to think, but how to think and how to speak and how to express ourselves, this is a great way to do it. Like, let
Yep.
an opponent say, on the contrary,
Right. But
I believe patriotism is this.
But
And
let me ask you this, Jerry. We seeing, and this is for those of you that are watching and listening to this, the question now lies is, are we teaching the wrong things in school? Or is there an agenda that we're trying to teach? So instead of, I think there's a lost art of critical thinking, right? We're not necessarily, we're teaching kids how to memorize stuff, which serves its purpose to a sense, but we don't teach them how to think for themselves or come up with reasons why they're thinking that's it, and then being able to articulate why they're given those answers. Does that make sense?
oh yeah, yeah. And you look at the motivation of different schools. Public schools, it's all about attendance so they can get the funding, and then if they have a mandate to have so many people pass a standardized test by a certain time, then they just teach to the test because that's the motivation to keep their jobs. And then a private school is really looking at enrollment and tuition.
Right.
And you get somebody in there who's a parent with enough money who could be a donor, and all of a sudden they've got the flexibility to sway what the school is about. And I have no idea why this principal said, we're going to have you change your speech. Like, if it had a bunch of F-bombs in it, I was like, okay, well, take the profanity out. But it sounds like, take out the patriotic parts
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this campaign for a patriotic role.
Right.
It's like, huh?
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and that's not a dig. I'm not saying that's not a dig on our community heroes, our teachers. There's a lot of great teachers out there that are doing the right thing. I'm not saying that because I love our educators out there, particularly the ones that are doing the right thing. So Interesting stuff. Look that up, folks. It's patriotic speech, or a student to edit patriotic speech, if you're interested in learning more about that. Jerry, let's get into some of the shows, man. We're coming up. Wow, we're 40. I love this. Over 45 minutes. I love this, man. It's great having you on. Why don't you kick us off? Beyond the Rut. You got an episode this week, or one that you want to talk about?
Yeah. What did I put out this week? Oh, a guy named David Landis, firefighter, retired.
Yeah.
Felt like his life was stuck in a rut in 2008. Just as he was journaling, kind of realized I am stuck. And it was his journaling that allowed him to see that he was stuck, how he was stuck. And then from there, he started using that journal as a tool for like, where did he want his life at this point? And where will it go from here? And what will it look like? What are my goals? And so on. So we talk a lot about how journaling, especially for men, because we don't always journal, how that can help us take our thoughts that are nebulous and intangible. And when you write it down on paper, you've now created something that's tangible that you look at, work with, and create that life worth living. So David Landis is this week's episode, came out on Monday. And then next week I talk with Naomi Hadaway. She's the host of a show called Leaving Well. And we talk about when do you decide that it's time to leave your job? What are the criteria to look at? What are the signs? And when you do decide to leave, how do you leave in such a way that keeps your dignity intact, doesn't kill your career, and leaves your organization on a good footing, so that you leave that door open for after, when the jerk boss is gone, you can also come back.
A lot of you need to listen to that one. A lot of you need to listen. My approach to that is walk in, pack your stuff, and drop the mic. Not a good. Don't take my advice, folks.
Look, where you going? No bills to pay. I'm out.
I'm out. Good stuff, folks. That's Beyond the Rut with Jerry. You can listen to that on Heroes Media Group, or where you listen to your favorite podcasts. Next up, we got some new shows that have recently joined the network. Recently, first one up, Bump in the Road. This is a fun show. I'm really digging this one. Bump in the Road. Let me tell you a little bit about it. It's from heart-wrenching lows to triumph highs, Bump in the Road listeners on a series of emotional and spiritual journeys that reaffirm the power of the individual to create meaningful and an authentic life. Whether you're seeking inspiration during a personal struggle or simply looking for stories that touch the heart, Bump in the Road offers a poignant collection of conversations about the human journey. These stories are a reminder that even in the face of adversity, a better, wiser, more meaningful path lies ahead in each of us. This show is now live on Heroes Media Group. Go to heroesmediagroup.com and you can check out all the podcasts over there. Bump in the Road. The host, Pat, she is an amazing woman. Pilot. She does these hang gliders and stuff, and it was really, really cool chatting with her. And we're glad that and happy to have her part of the HMG family. Next up, another new show as of recently is The Professional Rule Breaker with our friend Kathy. Kathy has been great to work with the last few weeks. This is a really, really fun show as well. This week, actually yesterday, are you going to see AI as the opportunity for you to grow with it, or is it going to treat you like you should ignore it at the risk of getting left behind? Ever feel stuck in your business? Oh, no, I do. Do you ever remember the dream that you had before life got in the way? This week, she's diving into making those dreams a reality with special guest Philip Blanket from Dream Business Makeover. Philip worked on with some big names like FedEx, Goldman Sachs, and they're here to talk about the secrets of transforming your business with AI. It's called The Professional Rule Breaker. Check it out. And before we go on to the next one, Jerry, let me ask you this one. AI. What is your thoughts on AI?
Oh man, it's going to take over the world and kill us all. No, I'm kidding. I might have watched Terminator one time too many. I think if harnessed well, it's going to be a very powerful tool. It's already been around because a lot of big data, like used by Netflix and Amazon and FedEx. All these places already use AI and big data to uh, predict, what are we going to need? What do we want? How are we going to make decisions? I think now the biggest iteration we're seeing is that capability is now being put in the hands of all of us.
Right.
Um, so it kind of forces all of us to learn more about it and
Right.
its capabilities, and how do we discern between that was human created versus that was AI created. And a lot of things are going to be, at least in the creative space, a blend of both. And then so it could be a helpful tool.
Oh
And
yeah.
then of course,
I think it's a great tool in moderation, right? Too
yeah,
much of a good thing isn't good anymore, right? It turns bad. I think, and I've talked about this in last shows. A couple weeks ago, we had Ryan Williams Sr. on from the other side of the firewall. Was talking a little bit about AI as well. And, when AI first came out, it was like, oh, we're, iRobot, and all these other things start coming to mind, like, oh, robots are going to take over and they're taking jobs, and it's like, yeah, they're taking jobs, but there's a lot of other jobs that are open that people could do.
yeah,
And if you look at AI as a whole, it's still based off of, somebody had to build it. So it's pulling from information that we as people have continually uplinked stuff too. So it's going to be interesting nonetheless. But again, it's called Professional Rule Breaker. Check it out. Next up, we got the Senior Living Guide. .com. This is another newer show that we have on the network here. Dr. Klavansky, author of Dementia Prevention. This is important. And it looks like my screen is doing it again. I love this when my camera does this because it's so hot up in here. Dr. Klavansky, author of Dementia Prevention, using your head to save your brain, is back. This is a second series that he's been on. He sheds light on often underestimated influence of conditions like sleep apnea and UTIs on our cognitive well-being, particularly as we age. Discover how early recognition and management of these health concerns can play a pivotal role in safeguarding against dementia. This was a very interesting episode, and I'll go as far as to say that I was like, man, it almost got me a little nervous getting older. Like stuff you just have to, you never thought of it, like, I get dementia, whatever, but it's like, no, then you start hearing like what are some of the things that can lead to that. You start looking at your own life and you're like, man, maybe there's some things now. I'm in mid 40s, probably changed a few things that I'm not in my 20s. Mentally I'm still there, but physically, physically I'm not, so maybe there's some things that we need to change. It's called Senior Living Guide. Go to seniorlivingguide.com. You can check that out. What do we got next here? Next up, I've totally forgot I'm supposed to be doing this too. Next up, we got your 6 at 6 with the People's Patriot Project. Great nonprofit organization. They do a show. We got your 6 at 6 every Sunday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. They're on the old social media doing their live shows. They do a couple of shows during the week. They got another one called We P3 Radio. It's always a tongue twister for me, but with musicians and artists and stuff like that. And then they do a weekly debrief, they call it, on Monday night. So go check that out. We got your 6 at 6. It's like a round table. They got a ton of guests that come on, musicians and other veterans. It's a great show. 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Check it out. Next up, we got the Arms Room Show, the OG show of the HMG platform. This week, they're discussing vehicle emergency readiness and what tools you need to keep with you in your vehicle. This is a show that I encourage everyone to listen to. This is especially when they talk about this particular topic. They've talked about this topic in the past. They always update stuff when they cover this topic. And this week is no different. They're the reason why I started carrying like a to-go bag and having tools and making sure you have everything you need in your vehicle for emergency situations. This is one of those episodes that it's going to be beneficial. It's not something that people were like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll call roadside. What are you going to do in the middle of the night when you don't have cell service and you're stuck in the dark by yourself, right? Check it out. It's called The Arms Room Show. Next up, we're just talking about this show a minute ago. The Other Side of the Firewall this week. So they do a show every day, Monday through Friday. And some of the episodes that they covered this week, North Korea taking U.S. jobs. I got to listen to that one. That was Monday. Tuesday, they're talking about FBI takes down breach forums. Shocker. Wednesday was what are we compassion-oriented social media scams? What are compassion-oriented social media scams? That's definitely something everybody should probably listen to. Then they do a chat GPT, friend or foe. Interesting. And then they do their weekly rundown that came out early this morning. That's called The Other Side of the Firewall. These are great episodes. They're very consumable, about 12 to 20 minutes long. Go check them out. What do we got next, Jerry? What do we got next here? We got Every Man's Odyssey.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what's the event, but anyway.
Hello. Oh, yeah. Next up, yeah. Every Man's Odyssey. This is love this guy Cole. This episode, they're exploring the concept of love and its definition. He shares his personal experience of praying and hearing God say, "I love you," and which leads to a deeper and more meaningful love. He highlights the importance of sacrificial love and mentions the 5 love languages. Cole encourages listeners to understand how they give and receive love, to strive for genuine sacrificial love in their relationships and what that means. Pretty cool episode. Every Man's Odyssey. Check it out. I'm going to do an honorable mention to Shay Sparks on here. She's got some new season coming out in June.
Nice.
Stay tuned for that. Next up, we got the Misfit Nation podcast. It's another great one. They do several shows during the week, about 3 shows a week. You can check them out live this week. They welcome back Tom Kilglannen, president of Freedom Alliance, and Reese Carwell. She's a Gold Star daughter and rising senior at the University of Mississippi. Tom shares his insights of his 25 years of leadership at the Freedom Alliance and his role on the National Commission on Military, National and Public Service. Oh, wow. Okay. Nice. And then Reese discusses her journey as the Freedom Alliance Scholarship Fund recipient, honoring her father's legacy and her pediatric or orthopedic care aspirations as she graduates. So, and best of luck to that young lady there. So this one's called the Misfit Nation podcast. Go check it out.
And they're based out of San Antonio, I think.
They are. That is correct. Yeah.
Fellow Texan.
Next up, we got Homefront Sit Rep podcast. Let me see here. This week, and speaking of Homefront Sit Rep, David Willis is on right now. Good morning. How are you, brother? We're talking about you right now. This week, he's got 2 Wolf Foundation on. This was, I believe it was a Monday night show. They do a show Sunday night and Monday night, Homefront Sit Rep podcast. You can check them out. But the 2 Wolf Foundation, look this organization up. Really, really cool episode this week. I really dig this one. The 2 Wolf Foundation was a fun. I really want to go, check this place out. You could see Homefront Sit Rep podcast live Sunday nights and Mondays on their Facebook page or live here on HMG as well. So make sure you check it out. Homefront Sit Rep. All right, we're back to the banners here. What do we got next? The Joel Evans Show. This week, Steve Tajajin, MPT FAFS. He's a high-performance expert and consultant. He shares his journey from the world of sports to working with leadership and executive teams, talking about How to bring the best out of your team by understanding individual needs and creating a culture that opens trust. So that's the Joel Evans show this week. Good show. Good show. Joel does I'm going to sidebar about Joel real quick, because Joel was a former community hero. He was part of the Oakland PD back in the day, and he's got a group for first responders for a men's group as well. So I highly encourage you, go check out Joel Evans. Really solid dude.
Speaking of Oakland PD, my dad once freaked out the police department there returning some training C4. He was an MP. Walked in, he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for so and so." "Yeah, what do you got?" And then my dad just throws a briefcase up on the counter, opens it up, and all you see are bricks of C4. And one of the detectives walked in. He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" "I'm going on break," and he just walked out. And like a third of the cops in the room like went to their sidearms. I'm like, "Oh, this is how we die." And I just ducked down. I'm like, I was like 12 years old at the time. I'm like, this is it. This is how my dad gets us all killed, because he thinks he's with his military buddies, and no, he's in Oakland PD with a briefcase with C4 in it, and he did some quick talking.
This is not going to end well.
Yeah.
And speaking of PDs, Super Dave, the Hero Academy, that's up next. This week, he's got Chris Davis. Chris shares his journey from a retired police officer to an executive protection specialist. Talked about upon retiring, he discovered his passion for security, transitioning seamlessly into a new role that leveraged his extensive law enforcement experience. He emphasized the opportunities often arise unexpectedly, like bringing in C4 into a precinct, to returning it, I guess, and being ready to seize them that can lead to fulfilling and an exciting post-retirement career. It's pretty cool. Being in law enforcement, you retire, and then finding a purpose after that. And that's what it's about, too. Same thing with our military brothers and sisters, right? It's called the Hero Academy with Super Dave. Go check it out. Next up, we got Label Free Podcast. Yeah, I love it. I love it. This week, Craig Andrews, Marine veteran turned electrical engineer, mobile phone designer, marketer, and multi-best-selling author, shares his journey from designing mobile phones to marketing semiconductors and his experience of being in a coma for 6 weeks. He discusses the importance of creativity and marketing and the impact of tight constraints on problem solving. Also talks about his best-selling book, Hope That Won't Die, co-authored by his wife, sharing lessons learned from his near-death experience. I'm telling you, Jerry, this episode was just like, holy cow. Like, wow. Great episode. Great episode. Label Free Podcast. All right. I see here. What do we got? Josh, appreciate you jumping on. Thank you. Next up, we got Because Bikers Matter podcast. This week, Vegas welcomes Luke Pennington back to the show. He's executive director and the founder of Ride Jenny Ride Foundation. Luke talks about the success of a recent Ride Jenny Ride event that they did. They saw over 545 motorcycles and over 1,100 participants in this. They highlight the coordination with law enforcement to ensure a safe, smooth ride. And they also talk about fundraising efforts, live auction, raffles, and donations from this event. Really cool event. I dig this in one of the years. It's on my bucket list to go check out one of these events one year. So Because Bikers Matter podcast, check it out. Next up, Environmentally Speaking. This week, this show is based up in Rhode Island, Massachusetts area. And this week, they're diving in on some significant and groundbreaking changes in Rhode Island's use of zoning laws. And this, I've always said that even though you're watching it here and the show is based up there, a lot of this stuff can tie into anywhere you live, the topics that they discuss. This week, they're talking about legislative changes that impact on affordable housing and how new unified development review aims to streamline the planning and zoning approval process. Those of you that have ever tried building a house, getting all the approvals, sometimes depending on where you are, could take several months to get situated. So go check it out. They talk about that. Plus, they talk about a specialized land use court replacing the state housing appeals board. Interesting, and you learned a lot from it. It's called Environmentally Speaking. Stay with me, folks. We got two more. Next up, we got the MSEC podcast. I love these guys. Military Child Education Coalition. They're down there in just outside of Killeen, Texas.
Oh, wow.
It was where their home office is. Been working with this organization for many years. I love the fact that they focus on the children on this one. So those of you that are active duty, guard, reserve, or if you're a veteran and you still have kids that are in the home of school age, you should be following these folks. Military Child Education Coalition or militarychild.org. This week, it's that time of year. It's PCS season. How many of you out there are getting ready to PCS right now? I got several friends that are PCSing as we're doing this right now. Military families move on an average of every 2 to 3 years. And it's this constant moving can be very stressful, right? Those of you that have done it before, listen as Amy Schick, she's a seasoned military spouse, discusses how her family has navigated multiple moves and gives tips on making them a little bit easier. Check this episode out. You will be happy that you did. It's the MSEC podcast. Last, certainly not least for this week of shows, we got Chasing Happiness with our man Ryan down there in Arizona. This week, breaking free from identity manipulation, finding common ground in a polarized world. That's the title this week. This week, he's got special guest Corey Rosenick. He's a pastor, author, counselor, and coach whose passion of helping individuals navigate their journey towards self-discovery and fulfillment. Their discussion touches various aspects of life, but one theme emerges as a beacon of hope, reclaiming your humanity amidst a chaos of a modern society. So check it out. It's Chasing Happiness. Folks, again, you can check out all the shows, heroesmediagroup.com. I got to give some special shout outs here real quick to we got a new sponsor on the network called Veteran PCS. Go to veteranpcs.com. Great organization. And if you're in the military and you're getting ready to PCS, it is PCS season, and you haven't found that house, this website will show you realtors in your area that you're PCSing to. That's got all 50 states. They work with just over 300 realtors across the country and whatnot. So if you're PCSing and you're looking to buy a house, great tool to have. Veteran PCS. Check it out. HMG Beverage, our sister company. Appreciate them. Go to hmgbeverage.com or hmgcoffee.com. Use promo code HMG10. Get 10% off of your next purchase. My Tax Fella, business owners. I'm horrible with numbers. I admit it. I know that's one of my weaknesses. So what did I do? I went out and I got the professionals to do it for me. My Tax Fella. They do all of our taxes, bookkeeping, the whole 9 yards. It's a great resource. Check them out, mytaxfella.com. JB Auto Clothiers. That's why I look so good each and every week, right? Everybody come see how good I look, right? It's because of JB Auto Clothiers I look this good. Veteran owned, made in America. Custom made to measure suits for you, men and women. Check it out, jbautoclothiers.com. Forget Genetics, for all of you hunters out there, go check them out, forgetgenetics.com. Motorcycle safety lawyers. I say it every week. If you're riding a motorcycle, these guys need to be on your speed dial. Go check them out. Motorcycle safety lawyers. My Home Studio Mastery. Jerry, we know this guy, right?
Junaid.
Yeah, Junaid, great dude. Check it out, homestudiomastery.com. You check him out. The Freedom People .org. If you need a trust done, get them. Check them out. Sisu Stamina, Jim Neary's Bait and Tackle, and Warriors on the Water LTD. Boom. That is it. Appreciate all you guys. And go check out all their pages. I'm going to post this stuff after the show. So, again, folks, it is Memorial Day weekend. Remember what that's all about. Jerry, thank you so much for, first off, your service. Thank you for being a friend. And thank you for all that you do. Absolutely love your show and what you're about. And thank you for hanging out with us for
Thanks for having me on here, man. This was
this
fun.
week. So I appreciate it. Any parting words before we end her for the week?
Oh man, the same thing I always tell everybody I get to be a guest on a show of life is just too short to live it stuck in a rut. So get out there and go pursue that success that you've defined for yourself.
I love it. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. Everybody have a safe weekend. Get out there, enjoy the weekend. Get out there, get off the phones, get away from the computers and get outside. God bless you. God bless America. We'll see you guys next week.